Hello and welcome to this episode of Quake It Up. In this episode, I want to be talking about this book, Quaker Faith and Practice, which arrived for me in the post a couple of weeks ago. I've had some time to really get involved with it and read it through. I had read it before online, but it was nice to have a physical copy. In particular, in this episode, and what I'm hoping will be maybe a couple of episodes, going to make like a playlist thing, is going to be looking at the first bit of Quaker Faith and Practice, namely the advices and queries. I'm going to be talking about what they are, and we're going to go through a couple in each episode, discussing maybe some thoughts that I have about them, what I think they say about British Quakerism, and things like that. So let's get stuck in. So the Quaker Faith and Practice, the whole book, is effectively a how-to guide for Quakerism. So in it, it's got theology, it's got discussions on relationship with God, it's got discussions on worship, personal journey, relationships, testimonies, reflections, but it also has things to do with church governance. In fact, quite a lot of it is church governance. There's a lot about area meetings and business meetings and clerking and things, which I haven't read. I'm not going to lie. Basically, it looks at Quakerism as a faith, but also looks at how does it work practically. What is the structure like as well? So it kind of looks at the whole thing basically. So if you were really dedicated to wanting to know about Quakerism, read every bit of that, and you'd have a very good understanding of what British Quakerism looks like. So I think sometimes I've heard it called lovingly and sort of a bit jokingly the Quaker Bible, and I want to say that it's not the Bible, nor is it the Quaker Bible. There might be bits from the Bible in there, but there, for the most part, it is not anything to do with the Bible. It is a completely separate book. Quakers aren't quite trying to replace the Bible with Quaker Faith and Practice or anything like that. It is very practical as a book, which I suppose reflects that Quakerism itself is quite practical. So it's not the Bible. Want to get that out of the way right now. Another thing that it has been called, which I think is maybe a lot better, is that it is the Quaker's book. And that's because I just opened a page on a random page where it's talking about social responsibility. And I've got on this one 2 or 3 quotes taken from different Quakers. One's from 1979, one's from 1990. Where's some old ones? 1727. So these are quotes or messages from Quakers from throughout the Quaker history on a particular subject. The idea that through meeting, the light has given us a message on a particular topic, and someone has written it down in a concise way, so that leadings can be shared on a particular topic and can be shared throughout the whole of British Quakerism. So the idea would be you could look at whatever subject you want, and you can see what friends or Quakers have said about that throughout the Quaker period. So sometimes that language has been, the older language has been retained. So if you read something maybe from George Fox or William Penn, one of the earlier Quakers, you would be looking at the older style of English, and again, you could very well come up right next to it another quote from someone from 1990, and which would obviously be in more modern English. But all of them are coming to a greater understanding of the topic that is being in that chapter. So if it's on the peace testimony or on relationship with God, you get a full range of the Quaker experience of what it means to be a Quaker and have a relationship with God, or what it means to be a Quaker and be striving towards peace. Quaker Faith and Practice is regularly reviewed. In fact, at the moment, it is being reviewed. I was virtually at Quaker at the Britain Yearly Meeting at the end of May, and one of the things that I went to was the working group for the next edition of Quaker Faith and Practice. We're currently on the 5th edition, so this would be the 6th edition This one, I think, was done in 1994, and we're doing it again now. So it happens pretty much once a generation, and so that's very exciting. So it is regularly updated, but obviously some of these quotations have been in Quaker Faith and Practice since the very beginning. It started out quite early, especially the bit that I'm going to be talking to you about, I promise. The advices and queries came up pretty much in the 1700s as a way to for friends to prompt each other in terms of leadings, but also in terms of lifestyle, um, which we'll get onto later as well. So the Quaker Faith and Practice book has been around for a long time, and obviously has been developed. It used to be 2 books, and then it's been put down into 1 book in British Quakerism. I know in American Quakerism and other yearly meetings, it's still 2 books. You've got Discipline and Faith and Practice, or something like that. But in British Quakerism, it's just 1 book, which, to be honest, I think makes life a lot easier. Right. So, advices and queries. What is it? As I said, it's one of the first things you look at, which is good because it's the best bit. Also, you can read it in the big advices, Quaker Faith and Practice if you want. However, there are nice little booklets which can be handed out to newcomers. I got one in my first Quaker meeting, and that just makes it a lot easier. It means you don't have to go through the whole tome. You have a nice little booklet. You can read it during the meeting. You can take it away with you. It goes in your pocket. I've got one on my desk at work. It is a nicer way of just getting involved instead of being intimidated by a big, thick book. So it starts off straight away, and there are, well, there are 42, 43 if you're being controversial, but 42 different statements. Some are advices, so they would be statements, so pieces of advice. And then others are questions, they are the queries. And so both are meant to encourage you to maybe think a bit deeply, maybe ask you to question your judgments or your lifestyle and think whether or not you could be doing something differently in a way that's maybe more in keeping with Quaker faith and practice. They are separated into different groups, so they haven't been given any subsections. So what I wanted to do in each of these videos is to go through one group at a time and talk about maybe why they've been grouped together, what sticks out for me. Maybe, as I said in the comments, if I read something or you read it, I'll put links to the online version if you don't have a physical copy, and share the ones in that group which you think were really pertinent to you or have really affected your life if you have been a Quaker for a long while and that's something that you will keep coming back to. So the first one that the first group that I'm going to be looking at is the first 7, and what I'll do is I'll read them and I'll talk through maybe what I think that says about Quakerism, or maybe some personal views. And as I said, please feel free to share your own. I am in no way saying that this is what it means. That's the whole point of Quakerism. It is personal experience. It is not, I'm not laying down any sort of rule or anything like that. This is just one guy saying, this is what I think about this. This is how it's affected me. This is what speaks to me from these texts. And we'll take it from there. And then we'll do the next group and the next group and the next group. And then the controversial last one, which isn't actually controversial in itself. It's just in a group or by itself. So I think first, as I said, I'm just going to read through them. And as I said, feel free to read along with me, either if you have your own physical version or if you want to go to the online version, which is in the link below, please follow that and we'll take it from there. So number 1, this is how it opens. Take heed, dear friends, capital F, meaning Quakers. It's what we call one another. Take heed, dear friends, to the promptings of love and truth in your hearts. Trust them as the leadings of God, whose light shows us our darkness and brings us to new life. Number 2. Bring the whole of your life under the ordering of the Spirit of Christ. Are you open to the healing power of God's love? Cherish that of God within you, so that this love may grow in you and guide you. Let your worship and your daily life enrich each other. Treasure your experience of God, however it comes to you. Remember that Christianity is not a notion, but a way. I'm just going to stop there very quickly, just because before we go into it too much, because I think this is important. So those are the first 2 advices. I suppose those are both advices. There's no queries in that. And I think the first thing that struck me when I first read them knowing what I knew of Quakerism before coming to Quakerism, I was very surprised at how very Christian that sounds. So they mention Christ straight away in Advice and Glory number 2, and remember that Christianity is not a notion but a way, and they mention God, which, if you see my other video, is a whole thing to be thinking about in Quakerism generally. So straight away, I was quite surprised by the traditional language, and also by the fact that Christianity is right there in the middle, well, at the beginning of these advices and queries. And now, as I said, this might just be because these texts and people really love the advices and queries, so they do stay. But it's interesting that that's put right at the very beginning. I think this is also really shown up in number 3 as well. So this is number 3. Do you try to set aside times of quiet for openness to the Holy Spirit? All of us need to find a way into silence, which allows us to deepen our awareness of the divine and to find the inward source of our strength. Seek to know an inward stillness, even amid the activities of daily life. Do you encourage in yourself and in others a habit of dependence on God's guidance for each day? Hold yourself and others in the light, knowing that all are cherished by God. Again, so then number 4 is, I would say, again, very, very Christian, traditionally Christian, if you know what I mean, not in any way saying that Quakers aren't Christians. Whole other debate. But this one, I think, is, I'd say, probably a very traditional Christian could probably read this and agree with it wholeheartedly. So the religious society of Friends is rooted in Christianity and has always found inspiration in the life and teachings of Jesus. How do you interpret your faith in the light of this heritage? How does Jesus speak to you today? Are you following Jesus' example of love in action? Are you learning from his life the reality and cost of obedience to God? How does his relationship with God challenge and inspire you? So, I think that one is, obviously, so now we're up number 4. We've had Christianity, we've had God, we've had Jesus, we've had Christ, we've had Holy Spirit. So very traditional language being used. But I think the way that they have talked about Jesus there is quite Quaker insofar as that you're looking at Jesus as an example. You're looking at Jesus maybe as a challenge to your worldview, and also as a means to develop your own personal relationship with God. But I think from a Quaker perspective, I think that's very powerful, because that's what we are looking to develop. We are looking to develop a personal relationship with God through the medium of Jesus, if you're down for that sort of vocabulary. So I think it works very much from a Quaker perspective. Number 5, take time to learn about other people's experiences of the light. Remember the importance of the Bible, the writings of friends, and all writings which reveal the ways of God. As you learn from others, can you in turn give freely from what you have gained? While respecting the experiences and opinions of others, do not be afraid to say what you have found and what you value. Appreciate that doubt and questioning can also lead to spiritual growth and to a greater awareness of the light that is in us all. So in that one, I think we get a really good sense of what Quakers mean when they talk about the light. It was mentioned in Advice and Queries number 1, but I think number 5 really starts to bring it out of starts developing that point a lot. So it mentions that the light is within us all, and that we should respond to that relationship in other people. So we should be looking to work with other people, and we should be looking to see what other people say and listen, but at the same time not just listen and be like, oh well, that's that, oh you must be right then, or well you think that's great, but I'm not going to share what I think. It is meant to be a discussion. You have to respect what people are saying to you about what their experiences have been, and see what truth you find in that, but also share and be proud of what of your relationship as well, and what you've learned, because that is just as important. And this idea of working with others comes up again in number 6. So do you work gladly with other religious groups in the pursuit of common goals? While remaining faithful to Quaker insights, try to enter imaginatively into the life and witness of other communities of faith, creating together the bonds of friendship. So again, the idea of ecumenism and working with other faith communities is really put at the heart and right at the beginning of Quaker Faith and Practice and Advices and Queries. The idea that we shouldn't be, as Quakers have been in the past, locked away from others, not wanting to get involved, and believing that the world was all lost and terrible, and us Quakers were the only true good uns, that by getting involved with other people that we can make a better world and listen to that of God in more people than just ourselves. And so then lastly, number 7 goes like this: be aware of the Spirit of God at work in the ordinary activities and experience of your daily life. Spiritual learning continues throughout life, and often in unexpected ways. There is inspiration to be found all around us, in the natural world, in the sciences and arts, in our work and friendships, in our sorrows as well as in our joys. Are you open to new lights, from whatever source it may come? Do you approach new ideas with discernment? I think, for me personally, that one, number 7, really hits home for me. I think that's always been one of my favorite, because I think it just helps you. I think what it does for me is it really centers me into the everyday nature of my relationship with the light, with God, whatever you want to call it, in the everyday, and where you might not look at it. We don't think that it is magical. We don't think that, going to the supermarket, buying our groceries, going to work, or anything like that could be magical. And I think that's sad, because I think that is true. It can happen in unexpected ways. There's inspiration to be found all around us. Are you open to new lights? I think that's a very exciting line. Um, are you ready for something to come up that you don't expect, that will inspire you in a way that you hadn't even expected or experienced before? I think what Advices and Queries does really well is it uses, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm easily pleased, but it uses language which gets me quite excited about life. I thought that as well about number 6, where they could have used loads of different phrases, but they chose to use the phrase imaginatively when it goes, while remaining faithful to Quaker insights, try to enter imaginatively into the life and witness of other communities of faith, which I think is quite a, a galvanizing word. It's not just, listen to what they say, but Quakerism's right. Or, have a discussion, and yeah, you can have a couple of inter-church groups, and that's great. Think about it imaginatively. Think about how you could do things differently. How can you do things better? How can you do it so that these ecumenical things can actually be worthwhile instead of just something that people feel is a nice thing to do? I think throughout this will be a recurring theme, at least for me, is that this I think gets me very excited about life with the vocabulary that they use. I wanted to also go back to um, number 1, actually, because I think I've talked in other videos, and it is very big in Quakerism about talking about what they think God is, and what do we mean by the light, and all that sort of stuff. And that's all very well and good, and really good to discuss. But at the end of the day, what I think everyone can agree on, certainly all Quakers could agree on, is this idea, number 1, where it says that God is the promptings of love and truth in our hearts. Trust them as leadings of God. And I think that whenever I get bogged down maybe in theology, which early Quakers were thought was a dead gospel, was something that was just what lettered men did in Cambridge and Oxford, and had nothing to do with actual um, religiosity. I think I come back to that phrase, promptings of love and truth, and that grounds me a bit, because I do believe that is true. I do believe that love and truth exist, and if I believe that they exist, then I believe that God exists. And if I believe that that is what God is, I can attune to that in a way which, you know, maybe I can't if I'm trying to work out something about the Trinity or the Assumption of Mary or something like that. I can't connect with that as an individual in the same way that I connect to the idea of love and truth. I think I probably got like two more things to say. So I think the first one as well. I think that, to be honest, I think they both come up in number 3. The first one is this idea that it seems to mention the importance of silence, which we know is big in Quakerism, but not. It doesn't seem to me in number 3 that it's really just talking about um, in meeting. So clearly, British Quakerism has silent meeting for worship but it says try to set aside times of quiet for openness to the Holy Spirit. Could you not do that by yourself? Is it not just an opportunity to reflect on your day? Is it not a time to just to take back from all the stuff that you have to think about in your day to day and just reconnect with promptings of love and truth? I think that's really important, and again something that I forget and does connect Quakerism to practical day-to-day stuff. How can I be a Quaker every day? And by making time for silence, checking in, so to speak, or checking out, however you want to see that. But I think that's really important, and I think this is why I really love this part of this book, is because it's practical, but it has very deep spiritual messages as well, in terms of how do you live, um, how do you treat others, and how can you build on your relationship with God? And I think that's ultimately what these first 7 have been about. They're about our relationship with God. I think another important piece of Quaker theology that comes up from this is, it mentions the light, it mentions silent worship, but again, it comes up again and again, the idea that um, the universalism of Quakerism. Now, that can be, people can debate on what Quaker universalism actually means, but I think when you come down to it, even in these first 7 passages, you've got in number 5 at the end, you've got the greater awareness of the light that is in us all. You've got in number 3, as I said, knowing that all are cherished by God. Our relationship with God in these 2 passages doesn't really seem to be predeterministic. So it doesn't follow the reformed idea that some are saved, some are damned, or even just that some are saved. Quakerism is very much of the opinion that everyone can be saved, but maybe understanding that not everyone will. But that saving grace is available to all, and I think that comes across very clearly in these first 7, both in number 3, but probably more importantly in number 5. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that was useful or that was worth watching. I don't know, but there are another 3 or 4 to do of these. So the advices and queries, the groups tend to be roughly about 10 in each. So I'll go through those and I'll again take my views, but don't take my views as the Quaker view or anything like that. These are just me as a person discovering and rediscovering and rereading and reloving these really great pieces of advices and queries from the Quaker perspective. But please do let me know what you think. I want to know what you think of these, how these have affected your lives, how these have moved you, what speaks out to you when you read them or reread them. Maybe you've read them before, read them loads, but maybe this time when you reread it, something else hit you which has never hit you before. Let me know. And next week, probably won't be next week, next time we'll be looking at advices and queries 8 to 16. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please do click on the thumbs up button and do check out some of my other videos about Quakerism in the UK. If you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, please do remember to subscribe as well. It really helps. Thank you.